Currim falte rib yakena on so I know. August currim falte specialte rib archind torden lano ruin o donen. Tamid aeronaut show con on order horton through lekra for boss civilian melanaked is a fair. August and shield Mihal Makarik, Padrick o Deshig, August Seamus o Sulban. And to honour their memory, I will call on Johnny Hennessy to lay a reed. Now, Johnny is a son of Jack Hennessy, one of the boys of Kilmichael.
Kilmichael, as you well know, and I know I'm speaking to people who have, in many cases, have absolute expert knowledge of this, and are from the families of those who fought here and from the surrounding countryside. Kilmichael occupies a major position in the Irish pantheon, the Republican pantheon. The microcosm of Kilmichael encapsulates the War of Independence, and with it, the legitimacy of that expression, that fight to break ourselves out of the British Empire, determine our own destiny, and make Ireland, all of it, a democratic Irish Republic. There are those who disfavour that particular course, who are sorry that we ever left the United Kingdom, are sorry we turned our back on their empire and their so-called Commonwealth, and who wish that we could reinvigorate ourselves in the glory of their royalism. I, for one, as an Irishman and Irish citizen, do not share that view, but as a professional practitioner of history, I sometimes find myself in opposition with those who purport to write the past in such a way as to alter the course of our current forthcoming future. In other words, when they talk about Kilmichael, what they're really talking about is the threat posed, perceived threat posed as a provisional IRA to the 26th county state and the 6th county staters in the 1970s, the 1980s, and even into the early 1990s. That is what there is really at odds here. The mantle of historiography is used to essentially traduce the ideological underpinnings of the entire Republican project. This is an exceptionally dangerous operation. The balance of forces, less than 40 men versus nearly 20 men, was not decisive. The available ammunition, always a problem in those days, was very considerable, at circa 35 rounds per man. That would not have permitted a protracted fight. In any case, a protracted fight would have enabled the auxiliaries to overcome the IRA. They should have. They were better trained and they were much better armed and they were far more experienced. These are not men who were going to hightail out and run. This wasn't an ambush where half the British forces would withdraw within any. The auxiliaries would have fought it out. And this is where the personal military acumen of Barry really strikes him as a genius. I described him as that before and I will do so again. Barry is absolutely a military genius. The ruse adopted on that day was unconventional, wearing an IRA tunic, which he knew the auxiliaries would be curious about. They later misdescribed it as a British uniform. But even if it had been a British uniform, that's the type of thing commandos do. That's the type of thing that is not unusual in irregular warfare. And there's nothing irregular about the auxiliaries, right? There's nothing normal or typical or conventional about them, and nor indeed was there about the IRA. So by showing himself the stretch of road, he knew he'd be able, he surmised he would be able to halt the lead truck with 9 auxiliaries in it. He did so. He personally, famously, tossed a hand grenade into the cab, mortally wounding 2 of his enemies. This enabled his men to then envelop the vehicle and what was a necessarily brutal attack, and we shouldn't worry about that. This is revolutionary warfare. They got stuck into the auxiliaries and killed them all. Now, in hindsight, we can see how neatly it worked. But bear this in mind, no one had defeated the auxiliaries, and he had 2 truckloads of them to deal with. The deployment of those forces in 3 linked sections and a command section was extremely sophisticated. I mean, it's now textbook ambush material, but in those days that was extremely sophisticated. And because it worked so brilliantly, we now think it was always going to work. That's not the case. Barry's brilliant tactical command, his astute and personal courage on that day is what won that battle, bringing his men with him. And make no mistake, they were all courageous, because they could have expected very heavy casualties indeed, and 3 paid the ultimate price. It was never going to be easy. the attack on the second vehicle was always going to be more problematic. Because if they'd been able to join the first line immediately, the balance of forces would have been tipped in that particular sector. So they had to be stopped wherever they could. But there was no certainty as to where they could or would stop. I mean, I suppose they could have taken the lesser rogue option and driven through at speed, but not the auxiliaries. These are people who were up for a fight who they felt they could win. And in fact, the truth, they probably should have won, but they didn't. They didn't, for the reason I'm talking about. As you know, the second section of auxiliaries proved a little bit more resilient. They were able to disembark from their vehicle and take on the section. Barry came up, and eventually they won the day. When the Irish showed repeatedly that they could outfight the best that the British could deploy, and that the cost of holding Ireland was politically unacceptable, even to the British Liberal establishment, it was only a question of when the peace would happen and under what terms. Now, as I said to you, there was no reason why any Irish person would have any sense of enmity against a typical Briton. But that was not who was in this country fighting for the British perspective in Ireland. We were fighting their military. It had to be done thus, and it was. It was done very effectively. So when it comes to asking ourselves, should we be coming here? Is it appropriate for people like us to come here on these commemorations? Is it appropriate to commemorate such activities? My personal view is absolutely. Absolutely. Did the ambush have integrity? Did the War of Independence have integrity? It has at least as much integrity as the American War of Independence. And you're not going to find Americans turning their back on the 4th of July, and nor should they. We, as Irish people, as those who are interested in Irish history, people of this land, of this sector, are fully entitled not only to commemorate Kilmichael, but to celebrate it. Why shouldn't we? Why should we take our lead from those who wish to traduce us, wish to put us back in little boxes, to denationalise us, and essentially make us pliable tools of transnational capital? It doesn't matter to us. We don't have to worry about their terms of reference. The turnout on a day such as this is extremely telling, because if this is the spirit in this area, one can be sure it will be replicated in the hearts of many other Irish people. As long as there is anything called an Irish Republic, partial though it is at the moment, hopefully one day to be in its totality, as long as there is such a thing, and that should be forever, we should come here, we will come here, and we should celebrate Kilmichael. Thank you very much.
While we honour and song and in story, the memories of Pearson MacBride, whose names are illumined in glory, but martyrs so long since have died. Forget not the boys of Kilmichael, but the boys of gallant and true. How fond the green flag of Erin, and conquered the red, white and blue. On the 28th day of November, the Pens left the town of Macroom. They were seated in two Chrysler tenders, not knowing that they had made their doom. They were on the road to Kilmichael. They never expected to stall. They met with Tom Barry's flying column that made the clean sweep of them all. Forget not the boys of Kilmichael, just the red boys all get in control. How far neath the green flag of Erin, and conquer the red, white and blue.